Hello again, this is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Welcome back. So today I'm going to work on these front controls, and they're in the way to work on this tube and that IF transformer and so forth like that. So beginning with the sensitivity control, we've got this capacitor, and there is just if there's any way I can resituate this so that it will not require removal of the face, because the face comes out to about here. There's just enough clearance before you have to get this out of the area over here. So we got that to work on. I'm going to see if there's any way I can do this so that capacitor can be serviced in the future. And then we're going to take each control out and clean them and check the orientation of these capacitors, because I didn't know what that was about back in the day, and proceed on from there. So that's the plan for now. So I've got the sensitivity control out. It's a rather interesting control, actually. It's got two metal surfaces, and this pressure cork or wood or whatever that is, and as that rotates around, if I can get my fingers around here, the contact rotates around. And it seems to be very precise, and there are no places where there's a problem. The carbon must be right in here. And that just rotates like that. So we'll just give it a little bit of lubricant and put it back together. There's no issues with it at all. Well, we've made some good progress today. This this selectivity is in place. That's about the best arrangement to at least be able to get at it, hopefully without removing the faceplate, but we won't know until it's put together. This got all the capacitors were put in the right direction. I don't know what they were originally, but they're in the right direction. We got the roundy. That's this. Let's see if I can find it. We got the 10,000 ohm roundy replaced. It was at a little over tolerance, but these things are notorious. They actually absorb moisture, and then the values go up. So that's removed. There was this resistor was fine, and there's a 100 ohm resistor in here inside this. It's a little bitty wire round that I had the last time, but it still works. It's okay for the AVC, and it's still good. And I did replace the 10,000 ohm resistor right here. So actually this is 100,000 ohm here, and the 10,000 ohm is under the 100,000 ohm. That will be the wrap for today. We'll be going to Valdez to see my dad, and hopefully see some mountain leaves as well. And then we'll pick this up after we get back. Okay, I had to do this off camera. This is a very important component. It is what enables a knob to go onto the pitch control here. It was frozen, of course, and so I did use some WD-40 to loosen that up, and I'm going to drop this into some evaporust for a while, just to get this set screw all cleaned out and everything in operational again. But you have to be very careful in removing this, or you can snap that rather flimsy shaft right here. I've seen these radios on eBay with this thing snapped, and it's kind of like, oh well, sacrifice another set to make it work. Anyway, I got it off. It's the smallest Hallicrafters. There's a special Allen wrench that works with Hallicrafters, is also on the auction site, and this is the smallest one of those that will work. So let me put this into some evaporust and we'll keep going. Alright, so the way to remove this, I go through batteries on this light, about 3 every weekend. I'm a big battery user. Is you have to use a C-wrench in here. And eventually I'll get it to seat. There you go. You can't even get your finger in there to do this thing. Alright, it's loose. So, get some tweezers and pull that out, and then we'll turn the chassis over in the socket. Alright, so to remove this, I had to break this connection, this one, and really continue all the way around here to get the components loosened up to pull out this VFO coil, and we'll be checking those. And this 100,000 ohm, thankfully, this 100,000 ohm resistor turned out to be almost spot on at 105, so we'll be putting it back in and so forth. So makes it a lot easier to work with when you've got this part out. We'll probably remove this switch too before reinstalling this back into the system. Okay, so here's where I'm at. I put in the standby receive switch. That's a ground that I still need to put in. This jack, phono jack, is prepped and ready to go right in here. This goes back to the speaker terminals, and that's a ground. This is the power switch, and in the way they put these, there's a capacitor right there and one here. The way they put these in here, they had the paper capacitors against the bottom of the chassis, and it was really hard to get, you know, in there and all that kind of stuff. So now I've made it so that it's a pretty much easier job inserting and removing the power switch. And of course these will go to the various places, such as this goes to the, I believe it's the output tube or whatever, but this is the green and the yellow that comes from the mixer box, and here's a white, this actually is the one that goes to the power output tube. This is a white ground lead, and this one right here actually goes to the plate of the amplifier tube. So it'll go in right like there, and then this has all been tested and everything's good. There were no had a nice inductance and everything for the pitch control for the BFO, and that comes in next, and then we'll do the selectivity switch, and then we'll finish up kind of reconfiguring some of this mess down there. I'll tell you what, it's amazing this radio worked with cold solders and connections that I did and stuff like that. Amazing, but I guess there's no excuse, there's no beating experience, and I didn't have much back then. I did when I was a kid, I put together a Heath kit all by myself, and it worked, but that was then. It's been a while till between those days and 2017. So it's done some reconfiguring on these two tubes here a little bit, and this corrected all the capacitor positions. By the way, on the switch, so what do you do with the foil side? Well, the foil side actually goes to the switch, because the switch goes to the earlier stage plate, if I'm recalling the schematic properly. But let's see, yes. So this is, you can't read it, but the plate comes out here, and then there's a capacitor that goes into the switch, and then another that goes into the switch. So the foil side is away from the switch, not towards the switch, in order to go back to the plate, because you always have the foil side on the plate. Anyway, that's where we're at. All right, well, I've done enough. I've got pretty well at a breaking point here, and basically I got this finished out here. I went into and redid a lot of the wiring and connections on the power supply, things like burnt insulation, and just to reconfigure this to make it a little more solid and more neat. You could just cut this through when you need to get back. All of this has been reworked in here. These three tubes have been reworked. Can you tell a difference? Got the power switch back in. This is in. That's just being held in place by a screw. It's not, the screw doesn't go in until the faceplate's on. All this is reworked in here. A lot of, while I'm here, kind of some resistor replacements. Not that many resistor replacements, but some of those were just fine from 2017. Now this is a 2.2 megohm carbon resistor. However, a megohm resistor doesn't see, it sees picoamps. I mean, if you have like a 10 volts on the AVC where that is, and then you're looking at microamps through a megohm size, this is 2.2 when you do the Ohm's law. And then wattage is the square of the current, which puts microamps into picoamps times the resistance. So even though it's 2.2 million ohms, we're talking about picoamps as a multiplier. So very little wattage that goes through this. Yet this is a 1 watt resistor with the heavy leads. I don't like that going into these mini tube, delicate tube connectors and things like that. So I went ahead and got rid of that. One thing I needed to mention, I had it on film, but I forgot to turn the microphone on, which is common with me. And there is a cable that goes from here all the way to the standby receive switch, and it normally follows up along here and then comes back down, and it gets caught into stuff, and you set the chassis down on top of it, and it tangles around and everything like that. So what I did was, and let me get the stuff. This stuff is almost dried up now, but it was enough for me to It's GE Silicone 2 Plus. But you have to first super glue it to hold it in place, and so that you can hold it tight for a while it sets in a few seconds, a couple minutes or so. Then you can follow it with this silicone, and that will keep that wire up there close to the chassis and away from this dial plate which comes through here and all sorts of things, and will not be any more trouble. So it's another option when tie wraps are not available, aren't going to do the job is what I should say, or other means of doing things is not going to do the job, but you got to keep a wire out of interfering with the dial plate or getting cut when you're putting a chassis down or things like that. So that's, I wanted to mention that as well. And so what remains will be there's a lot of connections to this selectivity switch, so we're going to go through it slow, do a slow quality check on it, just looking at everything, do the things that you do to go through and find bad. So I tell you, I found there were some awful solder connections in here, and just because I was just thinking, well, that's the way it was before, so I don't know how to make it better. So unfortunately I didn't make it better. Take your time. You probably do some reconfiguring. I actually added an extra ground here just to keep too many leads from going through here and risking a cold solder. Actually, when you have a lot of leads, you want to solder it several times from the bottom up, things like that. So I'd rather not have a lot of leads into a terminal. So this is connected in here. This came from the power switch. The green and the yellows are connected now, so the mixer box is fully in circuit. So that's where we'll leave it for this week, and come back at it with do this switch, which will take some time, do a quality check, and take as much time as necessary on that quality check, because we want it to be working well. So this is Hallicrafters Rehabs, and thanks for watching. Having fun on this set here.